Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Haynes, and I am the Senior Manager of ElevateEdAZ, which is a program of the Greater Phoenix Chamber Foundation. Thank you all so much for participating in our fall virtual educator externships. And of course, this couldn't be possible without our partners, which are Center for the Future of Arizona and Arizona Business and Education Coalition. So together we all came and we have this fantastic 2 weeks for you. And your session today is an extra special one. Kristen Merrifield, who is the CEO of the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits, has put together a rock star panel of other executives in the nonprofit industry and will be leading you through some presentations and then a panel discussion. So we do ask that if you have the capacity, please turn on your camera. It's always best when we can see each other, and we will get started. So Kristen, I'll pass it off to you.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Kim, and thanks, Cynthia, for your help today. We participated in our first externship earlier this year, and it was such an amazing process for us. And in that session, we talked to 3 sitting CEOs at charitable nonprofits. And so for this externship, we thought we would give you another flavor of the nonprofit sector. And so I'm very pleased to have with me 3 amazing nonprofit professionals who are actually in what we call the philanthropy sector. So another opportunity for students who want to make an impact on the community would be to consider a career in philanthropy. So I'm really happy to have Maria is here today. If you'll wave, Maria. She's from Bank of America. She's on our Alliance board. We also have another board member, Glenn, from the Arizona Community Foundation. Hi, Glenn. Thanks for joining. And then Carla is here. She is the president and CEO of Valley of the Sun United Way. So thank you for being here. I'm going to kick us off today, just kind of setting the foundation. I know often when I talk to folks, they are not familiar with the nonprofit sector here in Arizona, and it's quite eye-opening. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen and share some information with you. Let me go ahead and start this. All right, so what you're looking at is actually a report that the Alliance put out a few years ago, and it looks at not only the good work that charitable nonprofits do in the community, which many of you are probably very familiar with, but something we don't often talk about in our sector is the economic impact. And it's very surprising for folks to learn that we definitely are an economic engine. We are an employer right there along with some of our other for-profit sectors. So I'm just going to walk you through a few slides, and I can provide these to you. There's a full report that you can actually access. The website is there at the bottom. If you wanted to use this in your classrooms, this would be a great way to get some additional data into your students' hands. So this is the shocking number that always gets people's jaws to drop. There are 22,900, well, 907 at the time of this report, nonprofits in Arizona. That is a lot. Yes, I see your faces. I always love that reaction. And when you think about the nonprofit sector, there's everything from the large hospitals, universities, philanthropy, like we're going to hear about today, to your local backpack drives, right? And your, PTA clubs and soccer clubs and different things that are 501c3s and everything in between. And we also have nonprofits throughout the state of Arizona. So as you can imagine, with Maricopa County being the biggest county in terms of population, then of course we're going to have the biggest concentration of nonprofits there as well, because that's where the need is. Then followed by counties like Pima in southern Arizona, and then spread throughout the rest of the state. I will say though that don't let these numbers necessarily attribute to need, because as we get further out into rural Arizona, the need is exponential because there are fewer nonprofits. So I know we have a lot of amazing high school graduates actually work through the Alliance in a program called AmeriCorps Vista. It's a national service program. And we place those high school graduates out at nonprofits in rural Arizona that are focused on alleviating poverty and as well as economic activity. So there's a great need out there, and what an amazing experience these students have. So there's one nonprofit for every 303 Arizonans. That is a high number when you think about our other states. So Arizona is blessed with a lot of nonprofits doing a lot of really great work. But I'm sure as some of our partners in philanthropy will tell you, we are also a young state in terms of philanthropy. We don't have long-standing family money here, or do we have corporate headquarters like we do back east or further on the West Coast? So there's a lot more competition for dollars. And that's why the sector you're going to hear a little bit more about later on is really important to the health of our communities. So here's how the nonprofits break out as in terms of cause areas. So some of the ones you probably think of top of mind: human services. So, everything from shelter services to food insecurity, food banks, but you have everything else in between: our arts and culture, our museums, our theaters. We have our animal and welfare and our environment groups. Hospitals, like I said, are included in there. Even organizations like the Alliance and the Chamber of Commerce are included in here. They're a different kind of C. They're a C6 trade association, but they're all included, and they make up this wonderful group of nonprofits here in the state. So when we talk about economic impact, we look at it in two different ways. So one is the direct effect. So we look at the nonprofit sector here in Arizona in terms of how much revenue do we generate specifically through our nonprofits, how many people do we directly employ, and how much do we pay even in things like taxes. We do pay payroll taxes. There are state and local taxes also that nonprofits are responsible for. But then we also look at that indirect and that induced effect. And those of you that are economics teachers will know exactly what I'm talking about. But for example, because I'm a nonprofit and I generate revenue, let's say through a fundraiser, or I generate revenue through paid tickets to come to my museum, I'm then able to pay my employees. They are then able to take that money and spend it in the economy. So that's a ripple effect of the nonprofit's activity. Another example could be I generate revenue as a nonprofit and I hire a marketing firm. I pay an accountant. I buy supplies. And so then that company is then able to pay their employees. They're able to do business, and so on and so forth. So we look at it in two different ways. And these are the numbers. So this is as of 2016. It's in terms of employment, the nonprofit sector here in Arizona is the 5th largest non-government employer. We are actually very close in terms of jobs and wages paid to industries like construction and wholesale, which again, you don't think about the nonprofit sector in those terms. When you add those indirect and those induced jobs that the nonprofit sector creates, we're responsible for a little over 330,000 jobs here in Arizona. Wages, this is another area. Often there's a misconception that nonprofits have volunteers, they don't have paid staff, or they're unable to pay competitive rates, but the nonprofit sector actually pays $8.3 billion in direct wages, which is actually above the construction industry here in Arizona. And when you add that indirect or induced, we're at $14.9 billion the nonprofit sector is responsible for. We also generate the gross state product, so that revenue that we're generating from our activities totals $23.5 billion. And then again, something we don't talk often about, that state and local tax, we're contributing a total of $2.2 billion. So when you think of all that, it's definitely a large number. And when things like COVID, right, happen, and we are talking a lot about the impact to industries like retail, like hospitality, our small business folks, the nonprofit sector is right in there. So it's very important that we view them not only as doing good in the community, but also as a major employer and a major contributor to the economy. This slide just shows you how that breaks up in percentages. Sometimes that's a little bit easier to break off and digest when you think of it in comparison. So 7.7% of the gross state product, nearly 12% of all jobs here in Arizona are at a nonprofit. Nearly 11% of wages, and then about 9% of those state and local taxes. I mentioned 5th largest non-government employer. The thing to keep in mind with this number too is that this is looking only at 2,816 nonprofits. And you might say, well, why is that? Kristen, you said there was 22,000 nonprofits in Arizona. Only about 2,800 of those nonprofits have at least one part-time or full-time paid staff. So that tells me something, that there's a lot of work being done through volunteerism. And I know that, I think Maria, it was that mentioned she might talk about volunteerism and the opportunities for students to get involved, but of course the importance of being involved as a community citizen, even as we're into our careers, is extremely important. We have 37,000 more direct jobs than construction. I mentioned that. And then directly, we pay more wages than construction, wholesale, or accommodation and food services here in Arizona. And in terms of the sector, we are the 8th biggest direct contributor to our gross state product here in Arizona. So an amazing sector to be very proud of, entering as a potential career. And for those of us that work in it, it's a wonderful thing that not only is important to our state, but also has that really amazing feel-good, intangible benefit that you can't get at every job that you're at. So just a reminder, you can download that report. It also goes into the social return on investment. So beyond just the economic, it looks at if you invest $1, let's say in a Boys and Girls Club of Greater Phoenix, not only is that a contribution to the economy, but it allows a parent, right, to work and know that their kids are being taken care of. And so what does that return look like in the community as well? So I'll drop that website in the chat. But for now, I'm actually going to get to the really fun part, which I'm looking forward to, is hearing from our amazing panelists. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce them one by one and just give them time to share with you their career path, their advice, the skill sets they look for, whatever they feel would be most beneficial for our teachers to hear. So I'm going to actually have Carla start us off, if that's okay with her. And I'll have her fully introduce herself and then share with you whatever she'd like. And then we'll take questions at the end once all of our panelists have moved through. So feel free to be capturing those in the chat for now. Thanks. Hi, Carla.
Hi, Kristen, and thanks everyone for being here. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you and to know that this program is up off the ground. I am President and CEO of ElevateEdAZ United Way here in Maricopa County, and actually came from Orange County United Way in Orange County, California, where our United Way started a work-based learning program very similar to ElevateEdAZ, which included student internships, teacher externships, and working with a set of school districts that really opened students' eyes to opportunities that they could have in organizations in that community. And so thrilled to be here with you all today. I'm going to share just a few slides just to give you a little bit of visual interest more than just staring at my face. And sharing a little bit to help to illustrate a little bit about who we are at ElevateEdAZ United Way, and a little bit about my career path, as Kristen just said. So give me just one moment here, and I'm going to do this. I promise it will not be death by PowerPoint. We're all tired of that by now, being in the virtual world. That hopefully this will help a little bit with understanding about ElevateEdAZ United Way, what brought me here, and opportunities for students within the nonprofit sector. So ElevateEdAZ United Way serves all of Maricopa County. We are an independent United Way, and United Ways exist throughout the country in order to really help to understand the greatest needs in a community and then mobilize business resources, donations such as for Bank of America, other foundations like the Arizona Community Foundation, and working with nonprofits and schools to really move the needle on issues facing residents in a community. And so this organization has focused over the past 10 years on helping to address issues of homelessness, hunger, which I know that you're all very familiar with in terms of hunger, insecurity in the schools. We've helped with bringing breakfast in the classrooms to many schools and school districts, focused on financial stability and financial coaching. And then also we lead as United Way 2 programs for First Things First, to support early childhood education and quality in early childhood education throughout the state, and also to provide scholarships to children so that they enter school ready to learn. And throughout the course of the years, we've worked with many school districts, even more closely over the past several years, including Phoenix Union High School District, Murphy. I see that there's someone on the line from Mesa, and also Roosevelt, several other school districts. And we've done that over the course of the past several years. And in addition, over these past 7 months, of course, as COVID-19 has hit this community, and United Way was able to respond in partnership with ACF to really support schools and nonprofits, both with the emergency needs that they were seeing and that their constituents were seeing. Because as Kristen said, nonprofit organizations have been at the front lines of responding to the COVID crisis, just in the same way that emergency responders and our healthcare workers have been. And I can tell you that they have stepped up in ways that I think most could not have imagined, and have really supported our community through this very, very difficult time. And so I, as I said, came here from Orange County United Way in Orange County, California, after working in that organization for just over 20 years. And this United Way here in this community is absolutely seen as an innovator amongst its peers. It is one of the top 5 United Ways in the nation. If you didn't know that, it is one of the most well-respected organizations in the country as a United Way, and was a significant model for my work and what I did with Orange County United Way. And what I wanted to share a little bit here about, and I actually need to play these slides. Let me do that. Is that I joined the organization just about, just a little over a year ago. And this silly little picture is a picture at my predecessor's retirement party, Merle Washler, who is to my right, and also many former United Way CEOs, including Paul Luna, who now oversees the Helios Educational Foundation, who you may be familiar with, certainly because of their support, and Brian Hassett on the right, who has since left the community and is overseeing the United Way in Tennessee. And so needless to say, not only the shortest CEO of United Way in some time, even though I was wearing heels, but the first woman and the first Latina, which I learned about in the press release, that I could not be more proud, and certainly had big shoes to fill in joining this organization. And so just to share a little bit about my personal story and what brought me to this work and my career path, it really started well before I was born. And it started with my parents and where they came from. And my parents came from a very small country in South America called Paraguay, not to be confused with Uruguay, although it always is. And that country was a country that had the longest standing dictatorship of the 20th century in the Southern Hemisphere. And my father was a leader of the student movement against that dictatorship. And he led protests in front of American dignitaries as they were visiting. He was arrested, he spent time in jail, and he was tortured several times because of his activism. And it's because of that that I was born here in the US, because my parents, once they were married, needed to leave that country. He was blacklisted. And I was, as he would say, a week away from being born German, because he got the acceptance letter to the university at Penn State a week before I got the acceptance letter to university in Germany. And so I was born at State College, Pennsylvania, in international housing. And even though my father ended up becoming a professor in business, with his first job being at the U of A here in Arizona, he always instilled in me the importance of standing up for what's right and human rights issues. And so when I went away to college, I went to Berkeley in 1992. And you may remember at that time, there was a verdict that had just been put forward of three white police officers having been acquitted of the brutal beating of Rodney King. And thinking about today's time, how familiar does that sound? And as I was thinking that I was going to be studying political science and doing work in human rights issues in Latin America, where the democracies that were now emerging from dictatorships, I looked around and just thought there were human rights issues right here in the United States. I saw homelessness on the streets in Berkeley. I saw kids that were hungry. I learned about inequities in education. And I decided at that time that I wanted to redirect my energies towards addressing human rights issues that we see here every day in our own society, and realized that the nonprofit sector was the best place to do that, rather than being a lawyer, which is what I originally thought that I wanted to be. And so after graduating from college, working at a law firm for some time, I decided to redirect my energies to the nonprofit world. And after working in a few different environments, I landed at Orange County United Way just about 21 years ago. And Orange County United Way is also a wonderful organization. And I spent over, like I said, 20 years there, and spent my time there in probably just as many roles. And so part of the message here is that when you're in a nonprofit organization, and one like Orange County United Way, or a philanthropic organization like the Arizona Community Foundation, you have such growth opportunity because they're typically smaller organizations. And when you raise your hand to try something new, you will likely be the person who ends up leading that project. And you learn a lot of leadership skills by doing so, and are able to really grow through that process. And so I started out there at the front lines, working in community relations in a particular region of Orange County, being a liaison to the Latino community. And throughout the course of the years, I developed programs. I raised money for the programs. And then ultimately, before I left, this picture actually depicts a scorecard for a 10-year plan that we launched with 10-year community goals, which included cutting the percentage of homeless children in half, cutting the number of financially unstable families by 25%, helping to make sure that the high school dropout rate was cut in half, and helping to increase healthy youth by 1/3. And one of the things that I'm really pleased to share is that by the time I left that community, we were 5 years into our 10-year plan, and we had met 2 out of those 4 goals already within 5 years. So again, an example of what gets measured gets done, right? And if you're focused on a goal and you engage the community around it, you can accomplish anything. And so this last slide is to echo what Kristen mentioned, which is truly there are so many roles within a nonprofit organization or in a philanthropic organization, and they can range from corporate relations, to accounting, to social media, to legal issues, to obviously finance and budgeting. Fundraising is something to learn. And fundraising is really all about relationships, business management skills, web and graphic skills. And there's and as I said earlier, there's so many opportunities to learn all of these things because it's a smaller environment, and typically people will invest in you if you're interested in trying something new within an organization. And of course, the most important thing is that when you're in an organization that's a philanthropic organization or a nonprofit organization, it's an organization in which you know that you're doing good and you're helping others and you're helping to really move the needle on issues that need attention and that need your care. So really happy to be here. Looking forward to answering any questions. Thank you for having me, Kristen and team. And that's my story. So I'm happy to answer any questions at the conclusion of the rest of the team speaking.
Thank you so much, Carla. We are so fortunate to have a leader like you here in Arizona. And, you know, with United Way, it's really cool because not only do they play a role in philanthropy, but they also are working directly in the communities, providing resources and support and working with a ton of nonprofit organizations collaboratively. So definitely, yes, if you have more questions for Carla, please put them in the chat and we will talk to you a little bit more, Carla. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
All right, I am actually going to move next to Glenn from the Arizona Community Foundation. So Glenn, thank you for being here, and I'll let you fully introduce yourself and tell about your journey.
Perfect. Thank you, Kristen. And I first want to share Carla's excitement about this program and all of your participation. This actually, ACF provided grant funding to the Chamber to launch this program. And this was actually the last grant that we awarded in our office before we all physically left the office and have not since returned. So very excited to see that things are continuing on anyway. So my name is Glenn Weick. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and External Affairs at the Arizona Community Foundation. I've been at the foundation for 8 years. Actually, tomorrow is my 8-year anniversary. So super excited about that. The Arizona Community Foundation is a statewide foundation. We are one of the 20 largest community foundations in the United States. And there are over 700 community foundations across the country. Most community foundations are geographically focused on a city or potentially at a county level. ACF is unique in that we are a statewide foundation. So our headquarters is located here in the Phoenix area. And we also have offices in Flagstaff, Prescott, Sedona, Yuma, and Cochise County. And so community foundations are a little bit different than maybe the typical private foundation that you would often think about. So community foundations are essentially community trusts. And so we are a public charity. We're a 501c3 organization, and we work with individuals and corporations to cultivate philanthropy and work with those individuals and corporations to align their interests with the needs of the community. And so we have what we call a philanthropic agenda. And so those are our primary categories of giving, which are quality education, arts and culture, community improvement and development, environment, sustainability, and health innovations. And so we work with our over 2,000 donors to identify the needs, community needs that they are interested in, and work with them to deploy those resources across the state. And indeed, we do make grants across the United States and around the world. We are also Arizona's largest independent provider of scholarships. So please, if any of you have senior students this year, have them visit azfoundation.org beginning January 1st to submit an application. We administer over 200 scholarship programs for a variety of different interests. We provide scholarships for students staying in state, going to community colleges, going to Ivy League schools. So please do encourage our students to visit our website beginning in January. So with that, I think in terms of my career path, I'm from New Mexico, and so I transferred to Arizona State University in my freshman year of college. And I was really interested in business until I actually started taking business classes, and then I decided I was not interested in business. And so it took 2 years to figure that out. But while I was attending ASU, I was working for the Phoenix Zoo, which you may not know is actually the United States' largest nonprofit, non-government run zoo. So in my time at the Phoenix Zoo, I learned a lot about nonprofit organizations and the different services that they provide to the community, and became really interested in the nonprofit sector. And so I will never forget the day I walked into my business calculus class and sat there for about 30 minutes and then got up and walked out and never returned to business school. And I knew that wasn't for me. And so I took a couple of days to think about it, and went back to see my advisor, and I switched to the School of Public Programs at ASU. And so I received my undergraduate degree in public service and public policy. I still wasn't really sure what exactly I was going to do with that, but I knew that I had more of a passion for the things that nonprofits do to serve the community than I had ever felt in my time in business school. That's not to say that I didn't bring a lot of the things that I learned in business school along with me in my career. But for me, I needed the passion, and I found that in the nonprofit sector. And so once I graduated, I loved the zoo, but I was looking for the next thing for me. And I had learned about the Arizona Community Foundation through the foundation's funding of several of the zoo's programs and other local nonprofit organizations. And so I joined the ACF team in October of 2012. And I think to Carla's point, the nonprofit sector and philanthropy does offer a really unique opportunity for personal and career growth. And so in the 8 years that I've been at ACF, I've been promoted 8 times. And so I started in, not 8 times, 5 times, 5 times in 8 years. It's still a lot. It's very exciting. But I started as a member of our development team. And so I was working really closely with donors. And from that point, I've had roles in compliance. I've worked with our finance team. I most recently ran our education programs, and I currently oversee our organizational strategic planning and public policy efforts. And so, I think to Carla's earlier point, we are no different, I think, than other types of businesses. I mean, we have a marketing department. We have over $1 billion in charitable assets under management across our 2,000 funds. And so we have an investment management team. We have a really robust finance and accounting team. We have a legal team. So in terms of, career paths, I don't think that there's anything particularly unique that the philanthropic sector wouldn't have that other, areas of the economy would have. However, when we're hiring, we do definitely look to identify the passion that I think Carla talked about. We absolutely need our applicants to have an interest in serving the community. And, I think philanthropy is a little bit unique in that we typically are not providing direct programs to the community. We work with nonprofit organizations across the state to implement a variety of projects and services to serve the people of Arizona. And so we are sort of a step away from kind of the direct action. But we are also working very closely with thousands of donors across the state. And so, we're working with people who have a passion for the things that they want to do with their philanthropy. And we need our employees to come with that same passion every day and realize that the work that they're doing does, at the end of the day, have a direct impact on the quality of life of the people of Arizona. So I will leave it there, and I'm happy to answer any questions once we hear from Maria.
Great, thanks, Glenn. I can't believe it's been 8 years. It's been amazing to have you on the board for, gosh, what, at least half of that, right?
Yep, 4 or 5 years, I think.
Yeah, and ACF has just been an incredible partner, especially through everything with COVID. So I did not know the connection to this project. So when I invited you, that's very cool. Thank you for supporting that.
Awesome.
All right, so last but certainly not least, Maria Echeveste from Bank of America, who's also on our board. She will bring a little bit of a different angle and lens as well, as she works in corporate philanthropy. So thank you, Maria, for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can all hear me okay. Thank you very much. First, a special thank you to you, teachers. And I love this, what we're doing today, because you're, of course, building that pipeline. But as we're doing all the Zoom and right now I'm with 3 computers here, I don't know how you're doing it or how the students are doing it. So first of all, thank you. And I'm great too. Thank you Kristen for inviting me. And I love sharing the table with peers like Carla and Glenn, because I think in these last 6 months since March, I think I've spoke with Carla, Glenn, and their teammates more than ever. So I point that out is the importance of collaboration. Unfortunately, this COVID crisis, the economic crisis, it has just elevated, of course, many that you see is those systematic issues, those challenges we kind of tend to ignore, but that need to be, what is going on with racial equity, what is going on with just who has food on their table, who doesn't, but all these things. But what I've been very fortunate to do in these last 6 months, or almost 10 months, working with peers like Glenn and Carla and Kristen and others, and how do we be responsive to that? And it's not only external in the community serving nonprofits, but then also with my peers in the bank. We have 9,000 employees here in Bank of America in the Phoenix market. How are we supporting our employees also with resources? So, I really thank my peers who are here at the table joining. I'll just share a little bit about where I'm at today, and then I'd love to share some feedback and some opportunities to share for your students. I am now, this is my 26th year with Bank of America. I started, growing up in California and then moving out here to Phoenix. I think there's Mesa. I did go to Mountain View. And then I went to Arizona State University. And it's funny when Carla said attorney, because I did want to go and be an attorney. That was my dream, go to college, be an attorney. You'll solve the world. And then when you said about business, I did start that angle, business, going into business. And I ended up liberal arts. But I did get through business stats. And so I share that because, as you know, some of our students have a straight path of where they're going to go. And some, it comes to them. So I think I was just very fortunate back. And some of my peers I work with today in other areas. Back in the early 80s at Arizona State University, there was a program they created called it was to get Hispanic students like myself interested in going to college. So it was a summer program. It was prior to my senior year. And growing up in California, I really wanted to get out of here, go out of state, but having that connection, that time at ASU, seeing how much I learned of what those resources were. I said, no, I'm going to go to ASU. And I did that. I met my husband there. So I think that was one of the best things. We're now 36 years, raised our 4 daughters, but also my friends there in the Hispanic Business Student Association, in Devil's Advocates, and being involved. Those are some of my lifelong friends, and some of them are now directors of nonprofits or my peers at banks or whatever. So it's important that I think wherever that student goes post-secondary to college, those connections, those are lifelong, and those are going to be change makers. So I was just real fortunate to have those connections there because of those resources of those programs to, get me introduced to go to ASU, and then being graduating as a Sun Devil. But then at the end of my program at Arizona State University and through the Hispanic Business Student Association, there was a program where we would work with the college students, and we would go do internships. And so my first internship was with Thomas Espinoza and Elisa de Lavada, who is now at ACF. They were actually, that was my internship. I got to work with them, and they were in community development, working in South Phoenix. So that was my first kind of, what's going on? What is community development? What are needs in the community? I knew most of that, kind of like Carla's story, with my parents being involved and engaged in community. And so I saw it through their eyes. But then now, as I was soon to graduate from ASU, I got to kind of see, what does it mean to redevelop in a community? What does it mean to bring investment back into a community that may have been neglected? And so I was real fortunate, because that just kind of got me into that area of what we call as community development. And I personally kind of just term that it's actually changed, because now you're hearing social equity, you're hearing things like, how do we make change in community? I think really it's just, how are we ensuring that there is equitable capital and investment all over the community to ensure that we are all at, whatever your quality of life, how you define it, you have an opportunity to obtain that. So from there, that was a short stint internship, but then we had to do was a team of 3 in my internship. We had to do a report and when we presented it, I was just, again, very fortunate that one of the the panelists was George Flores, who was the community development director at City of Phoenix. So he saw what we did, and then I was able to get an internship out of ASU and really just start into the City of Phoenix. So I spent about 8 years in the municipality or public sector space, if you can think. So it was, and then there it was working with communities, getting engaged, looking at planning, where people wanted to put in new parks, or how do you spend public dollars in a community. I say that because that helped me kind of build an understanding and an empathy of what were the needs in the market. And of course, I was on that side where I was saying, well, if only the banks would do this, or if only the private sector would do this. And then I did enter into the private sector from a compliance perspective, and eventually I got to Bank of America. And there is you may have heard Community Reinvestment Act. That is a law that banks are, wherever we're taking investments and lending, we should be spreading it around equitably into, for example, where our financial services or branches located, into the populations. Where are we investing in providing loans and products? So I grew up kind of in those last 20 plus years in that area. And what I've really appreciated working with our company is this is something that is a compliance law. Just like any other corporation, you have compliance, you have regulations. That's kind of our baseline. We really elevated that to say, how are we going to be impactful to our community, to our employees, and to our clients? And I've just been fortunate in the last 3-4 years to just own that space in Phoenix of the community. And then also, how do we deliver resources such as about $2 million in in foundation grants to the community. And so there has been, of course, national to local, we're the local player here. How do we do that to ensure we're a good steward of our foundation dollars? How do we do that in the right way with priorities and parameters? How do I do due diligence with nonprofits to ensure that if I'm giving a grant, it's the right thing to do? So I do depend a lot in peers, talking with Glenn and Elisa and Carla and others, and even peers at my other banks, like, who are you investing in? Why? What am I investing in? Why? That's part of that collaboration, that connecting. And then also I need to know what is going on in the community. So I need to visit nonprofits, get my hands dirty, go volunteer, just see what's happening. So I've been doing that for many years. What I missed probably this year is this is the time we usually go build the habitat for house. We're not doing that because of virtual. So you have to kind of continue to get dirty with, who you're funding and what you're doing. I did go back about 10 years after college for my master's. We were fortunate that we had a program at the bank, so I was able to go back with the University of Phoenix. And I think that's important because in the world that I'm in, and I think my peers, you need to have that full context of the business side. So, again, foundation dollars are coming to our market from our national, but I need to make sure we're a good steward of that. One thing we say in the bank is having responsible growth. And it is a client manager and a lender, they do that in the delivery of their products. But I also have to do that in the delivery of our foundation grants. We need to make sure we have a voice of community. So I'm that connector with the bank and our teammates. I don't make the final decision. It's a committee internal. So, but I need to bring the voice of community. So like Kristen shared some of the surveys, to me, those are gold, the surveys of the nonprofits. That's a voice. And then how do I go deeper? I was on a session that the Alliance hosted this morning, hearing of some of the nonprofit needs. I have a call with one of them tomorrow. Say, okay, let's go deeper. Tell me more about that. So always wanting to be engaged and learning, and it is really important. What I think my kind of advice or recommendations as you're building into the students now, one of the challenges, I don't think it's a challenge. I think it's what I've seen this generation of students is there's so much passion, there's so much heart. Everybody wants to change the world, which is great. I mean, that's why you have Kristen, Carla, and Glenn here and all of you. But you have to have those tools behind you, whether it's business acumen, communication skills, technical skills, whatever that is. Sometimes people say, well, I'm just going to go do a nonprofit and create. No, and we're seeing now the nonprofits that are sustainable, I look for that. What are the teammates' background? What is their education? What is their skill set? And then also, you can be a player in this changing the world. You may not run a nonprofit, but you can sit on a board. Some students, I say, do what you love, and it might be a totally different business. They may create their own business, but then they can financially support the issue or passion they have, but they can also give their service and board service. So there's different ways to be a player in how do we make our world better. And so I just say lifelong learning. And then on the volunteer side, as I mentioned, many of us probably do it, but start young, volunteering those students, getting them out there, whatever way it is. And we have a program called Student Leaders. It will open again in November, and it's on our Bank of America Foundation website. That we are now, I think we just finished our 17th year where we select 5 high schools, juniors or seniors in this Phoenix market. And it is a pretty competitive process, but I will tell you, we don't get a lot. I wish we had more applicants. So if you have any juniors or seniors that are just passionate about community and involved, or as you're building the pipeline, if they're younger, we're looking for students who have been involved in the community. They volunteer, but maybe they've even seen an issue and they've either been involved in their school, like a Key Club or DECA or whatever that is. They've had a leadership role, but then they might have a desire, something to do in seeing an issue out there, and they want to help be a part of that solution. And we select 5 student leaders. They receive a $5,000 summer paid internship with the local Boys and Girls Club. And they also get a week very training, development. Typically it is the 1 week at with Close Up in Washington, DC. This year, of course, was different. It was all virtual. These wonderful students, they did their internship with the Boys and Girls Club as a virtual, working on projects. So it was a little different, but we continue to make it happen, and they received their scholarship. So that's one of the various programs out there for students, kind of going back to how I got into ASU. If you see those programs, and many of them are funded or supported with, you know, ACF and United Way and others, I highly encourage you get your students out, whatever way it is, even if it's virtually now, to get connected and broaden their horizon, especially if they have a passion to make a change and make some direction. So I will leave it like that at that and see if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Maria. You brought such an interesting angle to that, especially with everything that you all do with students specifically. So I know someone had asked if you could share that Bank of America Foundation maybe in the chat for everyone, that website, that would be great. And Michelle had also asked, where can students apply for that internship? So maybe you can put that in the chat. That would be awesome. And then we do have some great questions. So I'm gonna read the first one here from Michelle. She's hearing, you know, many different potential areas of study for students who are interested in college, but how would a student who is not college bound prepare for work in the public sector? What jobs might be available for them? So whoever would like to answer from our panelists, feel free to unmute yourselves. It's a great question. I know there's one thing I'll just mention. Oh, go ahead, Carla.
Oh, I mean, I was just going to say, I mean, there's a job at every level in an organization like the one that we all work in, right? I mean, we just celebrated the 25th anniversary of one of our vice presidents who started out as our front desk receptionist. And, you know, she came in at the ground level, she grew with us, we supported her education, and, you know, she became VP overseeing our workplace campaign efforts. And Maria probably knows her. It's Twyla. She's been with us for quite some time, and is an awesome asset to the community. And, you know, we have all kinds of roles. I mean, we have accounting roles that don't necessarily, you know, need a college education. So there's several roles, and I'm sure that anyone else on the panel can speak to those. And also, I think, like I mentioned earlier, organizations like ours help people grow and actually gain their education while they're with us, to be able to be better prepared for future roles within the organization as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo that, Carla. I think, you know, like most organizations, as you rise in the ranks of an organization, we do require higher levels of education. However, you know, in our foundation, many of our administrative staff joined the foundation not too long after high school. And what we're really looking for in that situation is what sort of connections to the community do they have? Have they volunteered? You know, with other organizations and that sort of thing. So, but the bright side is that at least ACF offers, you know, assistance for our employees who want to go to college if they are looking to continue to grow with the organization. So ACF actually just assisted me with obtaining my master's degree in public administration so that I can continue to grow with the organization. So there are many roles, and, you know, I will say in the nonprofit sector more broadly, I think there are a lot of organizations, particularly in more programmatic roles, that will hire individuals who have not yet achieved a college degree. So I think across the sector broadly, there are many opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I would say something I tell young professionals, or even those in high school that are getting ready to consider what they want to do next, is the best thing that they can do is volunteer, or even consider joining a young professionals board. Many nonprofits have those. And I tell you what, that's probably some of the best experience as you start to work in a charitable or a philanthropic organization, knowing what's happening in the boardroom and also knowing how they carry out their services as a volunteer is extremely wonderful experience to have. So there's definitely ways to gather that, even if you don't take the college path. Or Glenn, I know you and I have similar stories about earning our master's later than some of our colleagues. You're much younger than I am, but nonetheless, it can be done. So congratulations on that. I did have another question I wanted to get to from Cynthia. Really great question. What are some reasons that you don't hire a candidate for a position in your organization? I know several of our panelists do have that decision-making process. What's the thing that would make you say no, even if a candidate looked qualified on paper? Great advice for our students.
So I'll jump in just from things I've heard from peers who are hiring within the bank, other areas, and then in my experience. I think one of them is be your authentic self. Know who you are going to go hire and know what their culture is. Do your research, but also be true to who you are and what you say, and give those examples, those very specific. And then once they're in the workforce, we do hiring with various programs, workforce development programs where we're hiring students, young adults. And I hear from managers that sometimes it's just that lack of confidence, or even sometimes they're not willing to be coached. And, we have to be ready to be open into these situations and being coached in the right way, or being open the right way, because they are bringing a lot. The new employee is bringing a lot too. That's why we're hiring them. So they need to be confident in that, but also knowing that they're growing. And we've always are growing. And my last thing is be that lifelong learner. I can't emphasize that enough. And the nice thing is now companies like ours and many others, and like the ones you just shared, are open to support the student to go back to school, the worker, the employee, wherever that is at. So those are my kind of things I would say.
Anybody else want to chime in on that? I think that's great advice, Maria. If not, I've got a few other questions we can go to. Oh, go ahead, Carla.
I was just going to say, soft skills are everything, right? In terms of like how you interact, if you have a good attitude, if you're willing to, try anything new. I think those things matter. And as Maria says, if someone is being authentic, they come through as well, in terms of being engaged, being interested, being open to learning. People that look great on paper and have the worst soft skills when you first meet them, doesn't matter, right? In terms of, knowing who's going to be a good fit. And that's unfortunate, but I think that that's reality. And I think that Maria's right. People do need to be their authentic selves and make sure that they're also, applying for a role that they think is something that they would really enjoy, because that comes through more than anything in terms of passion and what you think you'd enjoy to be a part of.
Absolutely. What is the favorite thing I like to say is hire for attitude, train for skills, right? As employers, we all can agree upon that for sure. So.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think one thing to tell, especially students who may not get that job they think they are, there's a reason behind it. So don't let that deter you. Even now I'm on sessions and hearing some of our executives tell their story. And one shared, she really wanted to go for this position and was so upset she didn't get it. But then as she stepped back, it was because she needed to grow in this area. And when that was said, I resonated with that because I had a similar experience. And it ended up being the best thing that I did not get that position, because I grew in another area that I didn't do that self-reflection to know, oh, I need to learn this. So especially at these young ages going in transition into adulthood, it's so easy they can get deterred. I know I have those conversations with my own daughters who are now young adults, and how do they find someone they can confide in for that mentorship, for that coaching? It may be their family, but it may be outside of the family. And programs like Be a Leader has a beautiful program, Boys and Girls Club, others. And how can they go and confide in someone for that coaching?
Absolutely. Great points, Maria. We had another question on switching gears from Carly. So she asked, do you have any accommodations for students with special needs working at your nonprofits? She teaches students in a transition program, helping them prepare for the workforce.
So we don't specifically at the bank. I know we do have a site, back east, that we do have a support service center, but we do support programs like I know SARC and others that are in that workforce development. So when we look at who are we funding in the area of workforce development, we have also funded programs for that adult to transition into the best fit, but we don't have that I'm aware of specifically. But the program at SARC, I know, and this SARC is doing an engagement. I'll see if we can send this to you, a session on Friday morning, a virtual, so I'm sure it'll be replayed, about hiring in this, whom you're speaking of, into the workforce.
I would say there's quite a few nonprofits themselves who do offer programs like that with SARC. And if you need help connecting to those, we'd be happy to talk with you offline, and we can connect you to many of those amazing programs in the community that are doing just that. Cynthia, Kim, do we have time maybe for one more question? Is that kind of what you guys are feeling? Okay. One question was, and this gets me all fired up, and my board members will know why. She says our capstone, or they say, our capstone will be concerned with affecting public policy. How do your nonprofit organizations work with governments at various levels? Man, my soapbox, right, guys? So that's sometimes a common misperception that nonprofits can't be involved in advocacy and public policy, but I love that you're already saying, yes, they can, and it looks like that's one of your projects. So I know the Alliance as an organization, and I'm sure the Chamber, of course, is the same way, serving on the board. I know they are. We are very actively involved in public policy and advocacy, and nonprofits can be involved in that. And so one way that we work through that is we actually have a policy council for our nonprofits to come together and work collaboratively on issues impacting their agencies and their ability to carry out their missions. Obviously the one thing we can't get involved in is supporting political candidates for office or groups of candidates, because we are a 501c3. Now the Chamber is different, being a 501c6. And I know Glenn, maybe you can speak to the differences as it relates to philanthropy. I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, I think the nonprofit sector as a whole is still getting used to the idea of engaging in public policy, but under Kristen's leadership over at the Alliance, the sector is becoming more comfortable with that. I think even more cautious, though, is philanthropy. And so we are slowly dipping our toes into public policy as foundations in Arizona, and actually a number of local philanthropic institutions have added public policy positions to their staff in just the last maybe 5 years or so. And so ACF is no different. The position that I'm in now is brand new for the foundation. And so it was just 2 years ago that ACF established a public policy committee comprised of members of our board and community leaders. And so as a foundation, we are really looking at issues that affect quality of life across the state. And so, we're a statewide foundation. We do look very broadly at statewide policies and their connections to our philanthropic agenda. So those are those areas of investment that I talked about earlier around quality education and healthcare and the environment and arts and culture. And so right now, one of the big key initiatives that ACF is focused on is the issue of affordable housing. It was an issue before COVID, and it's even more pronounced now that many people are unfortunately losing their jobs and not able to work. And so we, as a foundation, given that alignment with our community improvement and development work, are actively working with members of the state legislature to invest more funds in the Housing Trust Fund. We're also working with like ASU and the Morrison Institute to develop policy papers and recommendations based on successes that other states have seen. So I will say there are definitely a lot of opportunities for policy engagement in both the nonprofit sector and philanthropy. And the exciting thing is, philanthropy is an interesting position, I think, to influence public policy because, unlike maybe a corporation or you know, a private business, our donors are looking to make a change in the community. And so we don't, I mean, we do have a board of directors, but there just aren't some of those things that I think typically hold some people back from engaging in policy. And so where we can find alignment with our investments in the community, we are absolutely looking to get involved as much as we can.
I will just add, now's the time that students can watch City Council online. Encourage your students to watch, even if it's one City Council or any kind of Maricopa County session, because they're going to learn, they need to learn governance and how public policy works. So highly recommend it.
Great. Well, that is it for us. Thank you so much, Maria, Glenn, and Carla. What great information. And I will turn it back to Kim.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. Again, thank you to Kristen, Carla, Maria, and Glenn for your expertise and for joining us today. Cynthia, do you have any updates for your cohort?
Just thanks everyone again for attending, and thank you, Carla, Glenn, Maria, and Kristen as well. This was a great session. I know that I learned a lot, and I'm sure all of our educational partners did as well. And then cohort B, you will receive an invite to Friday, our Friday collaboration / happy hour session just a little bit later today. So thanks. I hope you all have a great evening and get some relaxation in.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Carla.
Bye.
All right. Good deal. Thanks, Kim. Good session.
Hey, that was great. Thanks, Cindy. Have a great night.
You too. Okay, bye-bye.